we're about to get into a whole bunch of fun little Italian names. Okay, we good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna do the intro then. Okay. Hi, everybody. You're listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Hannah.
Yay!
Woo.
Clicked my tongue real loud on that. And
That's okay.
I'm Hannah.
That's okay.
Sorry, I had just recovered from a yawn.
You're fine. Do we have any announcements since we recorded like 3 days ago?
I tried to go to church this morning like a good Catholic, and there was a whole fucking tree in the way in the road, so that didn't happen.
Yep.
That's all.
Since my last episode where we talked about Iowa, I have been getting all the ads on traveling to Iowa.
That's what you get.
And I hate Iowa, so no.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got.
All right. I don't have any.
Well, can I tell
announcements.
my harrowing animal story? Did I tell you guys that yesterday?
No.
Oh my god. Okay.
I
listen
saw
to
that
this
you were
shit.
with goats, but that's it.
Yes. I was goat sitting, and also mostly dog sitting. The goats are pretty self-sufficient. They
Yeah, they're goats.
don't require a whole lot. But
They're goats.
sorry, I just had a panic. I was like, did I feed those rabbits this morning? Yes, I did. Oh my god. Okay. So yesterday, me and the dogs, there are 3 dogs. There's a chocolate lab named Willow, a beagle named Cora, and I don't know what he is. Oh, a Great Pyrenees named Bruno, who's a baby and really stupid. Like, so incredibly dumb. He's the size of a polar bear with the mentality of a goldfish. So I heard this ruckus in the backyard, and it was the chickens, and I was like, oh god, what's happening? So I look out the door, and there's a fox running through the yard. I was like, great, the fox is killing the chickens. So I crack the door open to scare the fox off, but the dogs are so, like, they're all just enough the right size that they, like, used all of their heads at once to push through the door. So it's a sliding glass door. So all 3 of the dogs took off. Willow, the lab, is such a good girl, though. She stopped right at the edge of the forest and sat down and barked like a good dog. But the other 2 motherfuckers took off into the woods, and I was like, great, this is the end. I looked first to see if the chicken was dead. There was no dead chicken. There was just a pile of feathers, which maybe there was a dead chicken. I don't know. I never found it. And then, so I was most worried about Cora because she's a beagle, and beagles are really stupid when it comes to, like, tracking things. They'll track until they're lost, that they won't come home. So my focus was on her, so I chased after her and finally caught up with her. And by the way, like, the woods in Maine aren't, like, flat and nice. It's, like, all, like, sheer rock cliffs and shit. Like, it's just... It's like the woods plus boulders. I was rock climbing to look for a fucking beagle. So I eventually found her, and I scooped her up, and I carried her out and threw her in the house, and I put Willow back in, even though she wasn't doing anything wrong. She's a perfect angel. And then I went looking for Bruno, and I managed to get him back in. I checked on the chickens again, still couldn't find any dead chickens, thought it was fine. Went to see if the goats were okay, they were fine. Went around the back, there was a dead chipmunk. I think that was the dogs, though, not the fox.
Okay.
Because there was a hole, and the chipmunk was lying next to the hole like it was going to be buried, but someone forgot to bury it. So then I went back inside, and I was like, okay, I'll let the dogs out for real now. So I put everyone's shock collars on. Well, I tried to. I put Willow's on, and Cora is on a chain because she wouldn't even stop for a shock collar. She would just and then keep going. So she has to be on a chain. So I put Cora out on her chain, and then Bruno, the fucking polar bear, burst past me and sprinted off into the woods like a fucking idiot. And Great Pyrenees have, like, extra dew claws so that they can rock climb. So he was, like, gone. He was, like, absolutely gone. And I was panicking because he's really dumb. And I was like, he's going to go on the road and get killed. And so He's so dumb.
No, and so that's how I am with Maisie. Anytime she gets away from me ever, I'm like, she's so stupid. She will not survive. Like,
he's gonna go in the road and bark at cars.
Yeah.
As they hit him. I punched my microphone. I knocked it right over.
Oh my
god. So then I was so panicked. I called my mom. I was like, Bruno's out and I'm alone and she's like, well, go look for him. I was like, I did. But I couldn't get very far because I was in sneakers and like I didn't have a bra on, TMI, whatever. But I was like, this is too much. I'm hot. I'm sweaty. It's awful. And so I like started walking down the road. I didn't get very far because they live out in the country, and so it's like all woods, and there was just no way I could have gotten him if I had spotted him. So I got in my car and I started driving. And I didn't see him, so I turned around, and when I came back, he was in the yard chasing the chickens, like, hey, what's up? Where you been? I was like, I fucking hate you. And so when I got him back inside, I punched it again, sorry.
Oh my God.
I can't help it. I have crazy hands.
I know.
Him and Cora got a stern talking to, but Willow got a treat for being such a good girl, and that was my harrowing animal journey yesterday. The end.
Oh, man.
Beautiful. Loved
you
it.
just can't have, like, a normal day ever, can you?
I really hate dog sitting. Something bad always happens when I dog sit.
Yeah.
Luckily, everyone came back alive this time.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Anyway, but I'm getting a pumpkin out of it. There's a pumpkin on the way from Vermont to me now, as we speak.
Yay, a whole pumpkin.
It's going to be big. My aunt and uncle grew some pretty massive pumpkins this year. They're like the size of a 6-year-old. They're big. Anyway, that's all. My announcement. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. That at least added some time, because this guy's going to be short. I have a PowerPoint and notes in the episode 66 folder, because we're on episode 66. So just everybody let me know when they're there. And
I'm here. Go. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm now here.
Oh,
okay, I know nothing about this, but I hear this all the time, and I'm like hella confused. All I know is truck drivers, right? Wrong,
yes, there
right?
are. Yes, truck drivers are tangentially involved. Okay, so today we are talking about Jimmy Hoffa, and more specifically the disappearance and like probable murder of Jimmy Hoffa. We don't actually fucking know still.
Oh, good.
So yeah, my sources. I have a lot again. I didn't use that one. I have an article from WBCK, which is out of Battle Creek, Michigan. It's like a local radio station. I have an article from DePauw University, the Daily Beast, Wikipedia, the Mob Museum, Belfer Center, the Crime Museum, Golf Digest, and Slate. There's a reason for the Golf Digest. Okay. Oh, and then I also
hit him with a golf club.
No.
You don't know that.
No, but that's not a theory. Let's just phrase it that way.
Okay.
So I also used an FBI memo, which we'll get into later. Okay, so...
Yeah, because here's what Shannon likes to do. Oh, my notes are only 27 pages long. Oh, just kidding, I found an FBI memo, now they're 48 pages.
Okay, but this time it's 11 pages. Like, we're gonna get through this pretty quickly.
You said 10 and a half.
And then I added a caveat saying I added more, now there's 11, but I'm done.
Oh my god, I'm so
And that's what
happened.
Okay. I didn't add anything else. It's at 11 pages. You can check. This time. I'm not speaking for the other times. I'm speaking for this time.
Because usually she's like, oh, it's 27 pages. I'm done.
Okay. None of them have been 27. One was close to 25. I think the Titanic was 25.
Okay.
None of them have been 27.
Shannon writes a fully fledged, like, historical research paper every episode.
Okay, so I sent them
a mini
this tweet.
dissertation.
I sent them this tweet this week that I saw from Dana Schwartz, who she hosts a podcast called Noble Blood. It's really good. It's just like one person telling a story, so I get bored, you know? But it's a really good podcast. But she basically tweeted, like, why do I have a job where I do a full-fledged 20-page term paper every 2 weeks? And I was like, this is how I approach our podcast.
Whereas me and Hannah are like, Oh wait, I was
I
supposed
slapped
to
this
record
shit together
today.
this morning. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Although to
Caffeine!
be fair, that's also how I approach school. So
Yeah.
Dude, that's how I wrote my thesis. So, like,
and
sometimes it be like that.
yeah, and
There
I'm
are
not
two kinds
saying
of writers.
Hannah and I do poorly in school because we do not.
No, you don't.
We just have
picked up
different
my-
approaches.
Oh, let me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna open my check for my. Listen to this money
Your
coming in
prize
for
that
how
you
good of
won.
a writer I am. Money. Woohoo!
And like, honestly,
Proud of you.
I thought that this
the
was gonna
fuck?
be longer, this topic, but there really isn't like a lot of information. So, can I
So
go
it's
ahead and
like-
get started?
Yeah,
I
except I,
suppose.
don't know where this money. Why do I have this much money? This
Is it more than you
isn't
thought?
Good. Yeah, I was supposed to get $600, and they gave me $5,600.
Holy shit!
Something isn't right. I'm scared. I don't want to owe them money.
Yeah, I would talk to them
panic.
before
I would
you
call
deposit
them and
that.
be like,
Hey, what happened?
I'm scared.
Yeah.
but also, please let me keep it
Can I have
Yeah.
it? Can you not charge me for it?
Yeah, I would.
because I'm poor.
Yeah, I would
That's
definitely
weird.
ask them before you deposit that check.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
only supposed to get $650, and that's $5,672. That's way too many.
That's not even remotely correct.
Nope, they
What?
put an extra couple thousand in there.
What?
I would, yeah, I
Okay.
would definitely call about that because
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Anyway, let's go to slide 2.
You can cut that out if you want. It doesn't
No, it's
matter,
fine. We'll see how the rest of the episode goes. If we need filler, I'll
That's-
leave it.
I
in.
mean, I hope
Shocking.
you made $5,000. But
yeah.
I mean, I
okay.
do too. It's more than I make at this fucking job I have. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
Continue.
So, slide 2.
Yes.
We're going to talk about his early life. There are no pictures that I could find from when he was younger,
I was
so
gonna
this
say.
is him as an adult. I couldn't find any.
That's
Okay.
not a young man.
No, it's not. Okay, so he was born James Riddle Hoffa on February 14th, 1913 in Brazil, Indiana. I'm assuming it's pronounced Brazil. It might be pronounced Brazil because it's fucking it's the Midwest. Who knows?
I was gonna say it's the Midwest, and so it's probably not.
It's probably
Right.
not actually pronounced like Brazil, but I didn't look into it that deeply. So
Fair.
his father died of lung disease when Hoffa was only 7, and his
That's a
father was
very
a coal
Indiana
miner.
disease. Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say he's fucking coal miner, isn't he?
Yeah, his father was a coal miner, and so that kind of influenced him in the like workers' rights fields because he was like, my dad was a coal miner and died of lung disease because he was a coal miner, which is a notoriously like it's an industry that is notoriously very hard on its workers, I guess. So there was that, and then so that was in 1920. His family moved to Detroit in 1924, and he remained there until he died/vanished. He left school at the age of 14 and began working full-time to help support his family. And as I kind of already said, even at that young age, he was very passionate about workers' rights and union organization. One of his first jobs was at a grocery store where he and the other workers were given substandard wages and had to work in poor conditions. The workers organized, and Hoffa quickly rose to a leadership position. And he was like 16 when this was happening. So, by 1932, Hoffa left the grocery chain and was invited to become an organizer with Local 299 of the Teamsters. Just as a side note, just so that we know, like, yes, he did have a family. If you can go to slide 3, he married Josephine Pozowak, I think, in 1936. They had a daughter named Barbara Ann in 1938. She is now retired, but she was a lawyer and judge in St. Louis County. And then they had a son named James Phillips, so he goes by, like, James P. Hoffa. That's, like, his professional, like, name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was born in 1941. Guess what his job is now?
Wait, I don't know.
He is
a lot of
also...
pressure.
He is also the president of the same union that his father was president of. Which, as we get
boy.
into it, looks a little funky. Because
We-
Hoffa didn't necessarily leave on good terms.
Interesting.
Well, because he
So-
maybe left in a body bag, right? I
Well,
don't know.
he had already left by that point. We'll
okay.
get to there.
we
So,
love white male nepotism. Yeah.
yeah. He is now, so James P. Hoffa is like the second longest serving IBT president. The first longest serving is like the guy who founded the union. So.
Well, then I guess he can't be like that bad of a president.
It's by elections, so who knows? He might be a really bad job, but they might just like him. I have no idea.
Right.
I don't know. I just know that he currently has the same job his father used to have.
Okay.
So, if you go to slide 4,
I like that lady's dress in logo. The one picture.
I know.
Just because it's a 40s dress, and that's my fashion taste. Anyway.
Shelby, we need to have like
a fashion show.
Fashion show.
Or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay, so slide 4 is just like the, I guess, logo for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. I'll refer to that between Teamsters as IB or IBT, like interchangeably.
It looks like the middle part of it looks like the one Star Wars symbol.
Oh yeah, like the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then they just stuck some horses on it, and we're
like, horses on top.
They were like, yeah, this works.
Can you imagine if they had horses in Star Wars? I mean, they have like lizards and shit that they ride, or like those those kangaroo things in that one movie.
Yeah, they're like alien creature things that they ride, but yeah. I'm just gonna pretend it's those and think of these people as Jedi now. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay.
I don't think you should.
I wouldn't do that, but okay.
I'm not, but
anyway. The IBT, they were a union representing truck drivers, so it's like semi-trucks, long-haul truckers, delivery trucks, people who work in warehouses, dealing with trucks, stuff like that.
Yes.
So there used to be like a whole bunch of like smaller Teamster unions. What Hoffa did was consolidate those into a national one. So he brought all of these like tiny unions under the umbrella of IBT. And so membership grew to 170,000 in 1936 and then to 420,000 just 3 years later. And then membership in the union grew steadily through World War II and reached 1 million members in 1951 during the post-war boom. And then Hoffa actually obtained a deferment for military service during World War II. He was able to successfully argue that his skill at running the union would help keep freight moving smoothly, which would help the war effort more than him being sent overseas. Which is probably one of the better reasons we've seen for a draft dodge.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's actually not a terrible reason.
That's actually, like, logical. So yeah, he was able to get a deferment from being, like, involved in the military and all that. So the Teamsters Union was one of the most powerful in the U.S. for a very long time, and it was also heavily influenced by organized crime, which we will get into more later. Just keep that in mind.
That doesn't surprise me.
I have a story about that, but I have to corroborate some facts first, and then I will tell my story.
Okay, that's fine. So Hoffa was selected as National Vice President of the Union in 1952 and became President of the Union in October of 1957. I think it was October. I couldn't find like an actual like month, but I think it was October. So his predecessor, a man named David Daniel Beck, had appeared before the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor or Management Field in March 1957 and pled the fifth anywhere between 117 to 140 times.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah. So what that means for people who couldn't follow, that was a lot of words. So basically, he had to testify before a Senate special committee because they were investigating him / the union / the mob. I'm not 100% sure. And pleading the fifth means, so like the Fifth Amendment, basically, you cannot be forced to testify and say things that will incriminate yourself. And so pleading the fifth is basically like the answer to the question you asked me will incriminate me, so I am going to plead the fifth. Except juries aren't supposed to, the way it works is juries aren't supposed to infer that as like an admission of guilt. They're just supposed to ignore the question. It's a whole thing. So this is Hoffa's predecessor. Beck was also under indictment when Hoffa was elected president of the union and was later convicted of fraud. So, like, it's corrupt all the way down. And so at the time that Hoffa was elected president in 1957, The IBT was part of the AFL-CIO. So that is the
American... That's a lot of letters.
I know. So that is the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. It's kind of like a super union. It's like it's like a group that unions can be a part of that will provide them more resources. I don't know how else to explain it. So AFL-CIO was so mad that IBT had voted Hoffa as president that they voted 5-1 to expel IBT from the AFL-CIO. And that's not really, like, a thing that happens unless there's actual, like, problems, you know?
Yeah.
They said that IBT could still be involved if they dismissed Hoffa as president, but that did not happen. And at the time, IBT was bringing in over $750,000 per year to AFL-CIO, and that's about $7.3 million today.
Oh my God.
So they were really mad.
How many dollars?
$7.3 million today.
That's many dollars.
Yeah, so they were like, that's how mad they were that Hoffa was president. They were willing to give up that much money over Hoffa being the president of IBT. So, anyway, IBT didn't really care. He was reelected in 1961. In 1964, he brought nearly all truck drivers in North America under a single National Master Freight Agreement. It's basically like a master contract. So if you are an employer of truck drivers, you're using like the same contract no matter what like company you're working for, kind of a thing. And that was probably one of Hoffa's like biggest accomplishments as president, to make like a standard contract. And then he was reelected again in 1966. So now we're going to talk about Hoffa's criminality. So,
yay!
I mean, as I've already discussed, corruption wasn't new for union leadership, at least with IBT. I don't know about other unions, but IBT was known to be pretty corrupt. And then also keep in mind that the union had grown so large and they had these master contracts now, they basically controlled like all commercial trucking. So they had a lot of leverage when dealing with other people or organizations. And so, like, it's one of those things where, like, I couldn't find any actual examples. Like, Hoffa did this, therefore he's corrupt. It was just a lot of sources saying he was corrupt, and that was it. So I don't actually know what he did. Like, I couldn't find any actual explanation. But he also had really close ties with the mafia, which I think a lot of people... It's just a given that you're corrupt if you're working with the mafia, you know? So I think that may have been part of it, too. And he, quote, often worked with organized crime when it was to the advantage of the union and its members. And that's from the Belfer Center. So he wasn't doing it, like, for fun. He was doing it because he saw them as helpful. So then on March 14th, 1957, so about 6-ish months before he was elected union president, he was arrested for trying to bribe an aide to the select committee that Beck was testifying to. But he was later acquitted of that charge. So he apparently was corrupt enough that the Attorney General of the United States wanted to arrest him. So this, at the time, was Robert Kennedy. So if you can go to slide 5, that's him on the left. That's still on the right is during some kind of testimony. Oh, and Hoffa is, he's deliberately using that finger at Kennedy.
I love that.
Yeah. They fucking hated each other.
Why do all the Kennedys look the exact same?
And yet different, you know?
Inbred Irishmen, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean,
right?
Probably.
Literally, like,
no,
you just see a picture and you're like, yeah, that's a Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But yeah, so Robert Kennedy, because... What?
Sorry. Hold on.
What?
You have to cut this out. You have to cut this out.
I will. Okay, so I just had to cut out a whole bunch of stuff because Hannah told us a story. The gist of the story was that Hannah's mom knows someone who knew Jimmy Hoffa. That is what we are going to leave it at.
That's all we can say, both legally and because we're scaredy cats.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
But also, that is the most your family thing.
It seriously
is.
Yeah.
Like, everything
crazy.
you ever say is just the most your family thing.
When you started this story, I was like, I know that something happened to my mom. Not happened, but, like, my mom knew this person, and I had to take care of it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I love
not
that.
take care of it. I had to find out more about it. So
yeah.
I was just, the reason I was so quiet a minute ago was because I was texting both of my parents.
Yeah.
They were like, don't do it on the podcast.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
man. Okay.
That's crazy.
Anyway. Really knew Jimmy Hoffa. Let's just say that.
Anyway, back to Robert Kennedy. Okay, so Kennedy really wanted to arrest Hoffa. He had a, quote, get Hoffa squad within the AG's office. Their entire job was to convict Hoffa. They were able to do that in 1964. They were able to convict him of jury tampering and defrauding the union's pension fund in 1964. And he went to prison in 1967 after spending 3 years appealing the convictions. And so, remember how he was reelected as IBT president in 1966? And then he went to jail in 1967, and he was still appealing everything when he was elected. So, like, they knew there was a decent chance he was going to go to prison. They purposely elected a specific person as vice president who could serve as president if Hoffa were to serve jail time. So, that guy's name was Frank Fitzsimmons. So, if you can go to slide 6, that is Frank Fitzsimmons. He was a Hoffa loyalist, and the plan was for Hoffa to run IBT through him. But
He looks really familiar. What does he look like?
Also, I love that this is, like, basically just a union, and they're like, I'm a loyalist. I'm a rebel.
It's very,
I mean, I know it's, like, very political, because that's how unions are, but, like,
yeah.
it cracks me up sometimes. Oh, God, Hannah, what happened now?
My dad just said, oh, he knew Jimmy Hoffa.
Oh, God.
Oh, man.
I really wish we could, like, leave all of that in here.
We left in an explanation.
Because I swear to God, I'm not lying. This is real. This is my real life.
I know. Okay, we're gonna go back to Fitzsimmons. Okay.
Yes.
He, was a Hoffa loyalist friend, whatever. The plan was for Hoffa to run IBT through him. But Fitzsimmons distanced himself from Hoffa fairly quickly after he went to prison and decentralized some of the power that Hoffa had used for himself. I don't really know why. I have my theories, but I don't have a concrete reason as to why. This all kind of led to Hoffa resigning as president.
Sorry.
So he ended up resigning as president on June 9th, 1971, while still in prison. And then Fitzsimmons was elected president on July 9th, 1971, and held that position for another 10 years. So now, we're going to have a Nixon cameo. On December...
worst kind of cameo.
I know. On December 23rd, 1971, Hoffa was released from prison after President Richard Nixon commuted his sentence to time served. So if you go to slide 7, I believe this is Hoffa leaving jail. This may have just been a coincidence. I don't know. But the IBT then endorsed Nixon for president, even though they normally endorse Democrats. Again, might be a coincidence. I don't know. They had... Who knows? They had endorsed Nixon in 1960, but that was the year he was running against JFK, and Hoffa was president of the Union, and probably knew that JFK would try to go after him harder than Nixon would. So,
yeah,
just throwing that out there.
Just some conjecture.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything 100%.
This is all alleged.
It's alleged, yeah. So part of the commutation agreement was that Hoffa was not allowed to engage in any form of labor organization or management of a labor union until March 6, 1980, which wasn't for another 9 years. Hoffa said he never agreed to that condition, but I don't know how, I don't even know if agreement was the right word for me to use, because I don't think he needed to agree to any, I don't know how commuting a sentence works, but Hoffa said he never agreed to it. He accused Nixon administrative officials of depriving him of his rights by imposing that by imposing that condition. He specifically pointed the finger at John Mitchell. Remember him? Who had the fun wife, Martha Mitchell? From the Nixon episode?
Oh, yeah.
The one who got held captive and had to jump out of a hotel room and all that nonsense? Yeah.
Yes.
He's in here again, too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. He then sued to invalidate the restriction. And then John Dean, who was Nixon's former counsel, who we talked about in the Nixon episode, was called for depositions. So this was while Watergate was still being, like, investigated. And his credibility was really shaky, but he was the one who had, like, drafted the commutation, so they kind of had to call him to testify in deposition. Hoffa ended up losing the case regardless. But he still tried to regain power and was working on this when he disappeared in 1975. So, his disappearance, he was trying to regain power at IBT. IBT had really close ties with the Mafia. The Mafia did not want Hoffa to regain power. And I saw a couple different reasons as to why. One reason was that they thought Fitzsimmons was easier to work with. Another was that they didn't want him controlling the pension funds because he'd been arrested for defrauding the pension fund. It may have been both of those reasons. It may have been neither. It may have been something completely different. I don't know. All I know is that the Mafia didn't want Hoffa to regain power in IBT. So, two of the men specifically who didn't want him to regain power were Anthony Provenzano and Anthony Giacolone. So if you can go to slide 8, we're about to get into a whole bunch of fun little Italian names. So Anthony Anthony Provenzano.
Literally up in here.
Yeah, he's in the picture on the left and he's in the middle. I chose this picture just because it's a very 70s photo.
It's very, like, 70s, but also very, like, mobster-esque.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's the thing. It's very 70s, but it could also be 90s in, like, Ukraine.
It could be, yes.
True, yes, that
true.
is correct.
There's a lot of fur in that picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Provenzano, who I think his nickname was Tony Pro, they all had mob nicknames that kind of made sense, and then for some people it's like, where the fuck did that come from? So he had actually been vice president of IBT during Hoffa's second term, so he knew Hoffa pretty well. He worked out of New Jersey and lived in New Jersey, and he was relatively high-ranking in the Genovese crime family in New York City. Wow. Yeah, so these are both quotes from Wikipedia.
Not Tony Pro.
Yeah, these are both quotes from Wikipedia. At least 2 of Provenzano's union opponents have been murdered, and others who had spoken out against him have been assaulted. So that's one of the quotes. This is the other one. In 1973 and 1974, Hoffa asked him for his support to regain his former position, but Provenzano refused and threatened Hoffa by reportedly saying he would pull out his guts and kidnap his grandchildren.
Holy shit.
So, he didn't like Jimmy Hoffa, to put it mildly. So then, Anthony Giacolone was part of the Detroit Mafia, so he actually lived in Detroit, like, along with Hoffa, and he often worked with his younger brother Vito. He was also married to a woman who was believed to be a cousin of Provenzano's. I don't know why we don't know that for sure, but apparently we don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so the FBI believes that the Giacolone brothers had set themselves up as, like, peacemakers between Hoffa and Provenzano. So they had made several visits to Hoffa prior to his disappearance with the apparent purpose of setting up a peace meeting between the two men. And then Hoffa's son James later said that he was convinced that the peace meeting was a pretext to Giacolone's setting Dad up for a hit, since Hoffa had been increasingly uneasy each time the Giacolone brothers arrived. So, Jimmy Hoffa disappeared on July 30th, 1975. He had gone to the Red Fox restaurant in a Detroit suburb to meet Provenzano and Giacolone. So if you can go to slide 9, that's the restaurant. The restaurant had actually been where his son had his wedding reception, so he knew the place, like, fairly well. So Hoffa left home at 1:15 p.m. and stopped to visit a friend at his office on the way there. So this friend was named Louis Linteau, and he owned a limo service. And he comes up again later. And then between 2:15 and 2:30, Hoffa called his wife on a payphone and complained that he had been stood up. The Giacolone brothers and Provenzano hadn't showed up. He said he'd be home at about 4 o'clock to start grilling steaks for dinner. Several witnesses saw Hoffa pacing the parking lot, and a few men who knew him, like, stopped to chat with him. And then he also called Linto again, which there's discrepancy as to when he called, which we'll get into that a little bit later. And then the FBI estimates that he left the location without a struggle at about 2:45 or 2:50, with one witness saying that they had seen Hoffa in the back of a maroon Lincoln or Mercury car with 3 other people. And no one ever saw him again. His wife called their children at 7 the next morning to tell them that Hoffa never came home. She also called Louis Linto. And then Linto found Hoffa's unlocked car at the restaurant at about 7:20 a.m., which prompted him to call the police. The state police were brought in. The FBI didn't join until about 4 days later. And then Hoffa's son James filed a missing person report at 6 p.m. on, what would that have been, July 31st. So for the investigation, the main piece of evidence was that maroon car. So if you go to slide 10, these are just photos like of that kind of car. It was, so Anthony Giacoloni's son Joseph actually owned a maroon Mercury Marquis, which, you know, the witness said it was either a maroon Mercury or a Lincoln. And so they were like, well, this dude who was involved, maybe his son has the same kind of car.
Yeah.
But they claimed it had been borrowed earlier that day. So they said it was borrowed by a man named Charles O'Brien so that he could deliver fish. Who the fuck would deliver fish in a Mercury Marquis? But that's beside the point. So
it's the 70s. Come on.
I know. So if you can go to slide 11, this is Charles O'Brien. O'Brien had actually been Hoffa's foster son for a while. And then I saw differing reports on their relationship. So some said that the relationship had soured over the years, while others said that O'Brien was like one of the few people that Hoffa would willingly get into a car with. And it's hard for me personally to reconcile those two things, but like obviously both can be true. But so I don't actually know like if they had to have been friendly enough that Hoffa would like be willing to get into a car with him. Right? But then a lot of people were like, actually, Charles hated him. So, like, I don't know. It's complicated. So, like, obviously, police were like, okay, we're still going to look through this car because it's, like, the only one that matches the description that is owned by anybody who's involved in this. And then on August 21st, this was nearly a month later, police dogs identified Hoffa's scent in the car. And that's all they had on evidence. That's literally it. So Provenzano and Giacoloni denied having scheduled a meeting with Hoffa that day. Hoffa had the meeting with them in his day planner and had met with the Giacoloni brothers about 4 days previously to set up the meeting, which obviously leads people to suspect that the meeting was a setup. Duh.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So
obviously.
Giacoloni and Provenzano both had very solid alibis. So Giacoloni was getting a haircut and made sure, like, it was one of those things, like, he made sure that people saw him getting a haircut. Like, it was at, like, some sports club that, like, he knew people at.
It's 2:30 and I'm getting a haircut.
Yeah. And then Provenzano was in New Jersey. So he, like, super wasn't there.
2:30 and I'm in New Jersey.
And so the FBI surveilled and bugged the men and many of their associates, but could never catch them talking about the case. They just didn't talk about it at all, even in private. So they probably knew that they were bugged and were actively not talking about it. So that's literally it. Like, the rest of this is just me explaining, like, how they tried to find his body. Later in 1975, there was an unsuccessful digging expedition with the hope of finding his body. I don't know where they were digging, but they did not find it. Hoffa was legally declared dead on December 9th, 1982. In 89... the agent in charge of the FBI's Detroit office said that he knew who did it, but it wasn't ever going to be prosecuted because they'd have to divulge informants and confidential sources. Which, like, it's fucking helpful, bud. Like, thanks. In 2001, the FBI matched Hoffa's hair, taken off of a hairbrush, with a strand found in that maroon Mercury Marquis. But it's possible that Hoffa had been in that car or on a different day. Or that it had been transferred by Giacoloni because they'd seen each other like 4 days before Hoffa disappeared.
Yeah.
We don't know where the hair came from, but they did match that.
I was going to say, we've talked about it before, but like...
It's really easy to transfer DNA. It's very easy to transfer DNA.
Or I guess you and I have talked about it.
Yeah, we were talking about Amanda Knox.
Yeah,
we were talking about
I was
Amanda
like,
Knox.
I know I've spoken about it to Shannon. But
yeah,
like DNA transfer is so easy.
Well, we were listening to, and that's why we drank a couple weeks ago, and Christine covered Amanda Knox, and that was a huge thing in the Amanda Knox thing, was transfer DNA.
Yeah.
I also do want to...
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm about to go on a rant on DNA. What are you... Okay, so I really hate when people say, like, well, that evidence is circumstantial. Literally all evidence except photo and video of someone committing a crime is circumstantial.
Yeah.
Because DNA doesn't prove that they killed them. It just proves that they were there. Right?
At some point in time.
Yeah.
Like,
it
doesn't
really bugs me.
necessarily mean they were even there at the time that the crime was being committed.
Exactly. And so it just bugs me when, like, I mean, it happens on TV shows a lot, which I'll give them a pass, but even, like, true crime people are like, well, it's circumstantial. It's like, literally everything is circumstantial. Like, it doesn't... Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. That means literally nothing.
Yeah, that just means it's evidence.
The trial might be a little bit harder now. That's
right.
it. Like... So, anyway. Moving on. On June 16th, 2006, the Detroit Free Press released the entire Hoffa's memo. So this is short for Hoffa extortion. I don't know why they titled it that, because it's about his disappearance. So it is a 56-page report that was initially supposed to be for a January 1976 briefing at the FBI headquarters. And this is a quote from Wikipedia. The memo records a belief that Hoffa was murdered at the behest of organized crime figures who regarded his efforts to regain power in the Teamsters as a threat to their control of the union's pension fund. It also stated that the FBI believed that Hoffa had been lured to a secondary location and that he was not murdered at the restaurant. I looked at the memo.
I thought you said Lord, like Lord. I was
no,
like,
Lord.
Why are we now like knights and shit?
Do I say that wrong too? Like,
yes, you said Lord.
Are you?
Y'all, he was done Lord up to that other place
in
that Mercury Marquis.
Yes, I mean Lord. I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry.
Lord.
I don't know how to say it right, apparently. I'm sorry.
It's the ooh in pool.
Okay.
Lord.
I can't. We're not doing this right now.
Okay, anyway. It's how she says tour.
Okay.
Tour.
Anyway. I read the memo.
Yes.
I skimmed the memo. I read chunks, and then other chunks I'm like, this isn't helpful. We're going to move on. So... It lists family members, local suspects outside of Michigan, and other important figures. It sums up the investigation, and then it lists problems that they're trying to work through. One of them is, like, the unknown. Like, they didn't really know, like, how trustworthy Louis Linto was, and, like, there was a problem that there were, like, no witnesses. We'll get into that more in, like, a little bit. And then they're still, to this day, doing digs to try to find his body. But most experts believe he was cremated, so I'm not really sure why we're doing that in the first place. So, now we are going to go on to theories. And so there are theories about the murder itself, the location of the murder, and where his body is located. So we're going to go through those, like, separately. So for the murder, most people believe that he was the victim of a mob hit. Duh. The issue is there isn't enough evidence or information about what happened. So this is a quote from Wikipedia. Both the 1976 Hoffa's memo and scholarship prior to its release focus on Mafia opposition to Hoffa's plans to regain the Teamsters' leadership and the threat Hoffa posed to the Mafia's control over the union's pension fund. The Hoffa's memo noted that Provenzano was not senior enough to order a mafia hit, though it did not rule out the possibility that his or someone else's personal vendetta against Hoffa was a motive. Scott Bernstein, a crime historian and journalist, argued in 2019 that Provenzano's role in the entire case was limited to acting as a lure. So, that's the end quote from Wikipedia. So basically, they were like, we think it's a mob hit. The FBI anyway said, we think it's a mob hit. We don't know if Provenzano had enough power to actually order it himself. Right? So others think that he didn't have the power to call the hit on his own, but that he got permission from someone higher up. And that probably would have been from a guy named Russell Bufalino, who we'll talk about in a little bit. There is an investigative journalist named Dan Moldia. So if you can go to the next slide, slide 12, that's Dan Moldia in the 70s and then now. he floated the idea that Hoffa was cooperating with the feds in investigations against his mafia opponents, and he was killed because of that. The Hoffa's memo also said that that might be a possibility, but Vincent Piersanti, who was an senior investigator with the state, doubted that Hoffa could have seriously threatened the mafia in that way. He'd been in prison for 5 years and probably didn't have much contact with them during that time. Additionally, most of the info he had also incriminated himself.
I was going to say, that's why most people don't really, like, snitch on the mafia.
Yeah.
Is because they're also involved. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how the mafia's always gotten away with it, is they, like, keep you involved so that you can't get out.
Exactly. A lot of the info he had also concerned matters that were outside of the statute of limitations. So, like, even if he had information, they couldn't do anything about it because it happened too long ago.
Yeah.
Which, like, I agree with these. Like, these make sense. But Piersanti thinks that it was an accidental killing. This is not a widely accepted theory. He might be the only person who thinks that.
How do you accidentally kill a mob boss?
He's not a mob boss.
Well,
he's not in the mafia. I feel like I should have specified that. He is not in the mafia. He's not Italian. He cannot be in the mafia. But you're right, though. Like, how would you just accidentally kill this guy when he was supposed to be meeting with a bunch of mafia dudes who hated him? Like, that's a weird situation. So just moving on from that. So there's 2 different books that claim Russell Bufalino had ordered the hit. So if you can go to slide 13, that's Russell Bufalino. So he was a mob boss with the Bufalino crime family, which operated in Northeast Pennsylvania. So Provenzano and Bufalino were both under indictment for the murder of Anthony Three Fingers Castellito, who'd been an officer in Provenzano's local Teamsters organization. Like, this is what I mean. Like, these names.
That's Tony Three Fingers.
Yeah.
No, I know. I've watched part of The Sopranos one time.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I only threw that in to establish that Provenzano and Bufalino did know each other. They were in different crime families, but they did know each other and they did work together on occasion. So here's more. They also claim that Salvatore Sally Bugs Bergoglio, his brother Gabriel Bergoglio, Thomas Andretta, and Charles O'Brien were the ones who had lured Hoffa away from the restaurant and killed him. So if you can go to slide 14, these are the Bergoglio brothers. So in the left photo, Salvatore is the guy on the right, and then Gabriel, I believe, is the guy in the photo on the right. Sorry, there's a lot of rights and lefts in here. Anyway, the Bergoglios had been named as possible suspects back in 1975, and they were close associates of Provenzano. And then if you can go to slide 15, Thomas Andretta is on the right here. He was actually Provenzano's alibi for the Hoffa disappearance. He claimed that they had been playing cards together in New Jersey. And then with O'Brien, the theory is that Brian was used, like, unknowingly as a way to get Hoffa into the car, as Hoffa was suspicious of Provenzano and his associates. Others say that O'Brien was probably too untrusted to be given a role in this operation, and that Vito Giacolone was used for that purpose instead. I will point out that O'Brien couldn't really keep his story straight about what he'd been doing that day, and again, the Hoffa's memo points out that O'Brien was one of the few people Hoffa would get into a car with, and also states that, quote, O'Brien is described by even his closest friends as a pathological liar who borders on being totally incompetent. So,
okay.
Yeah, so, like, he may have been involved. We don't know. The other 3 guys were, like, 99% sure were involved. It's Charles O'Brien who we're not 100% sure on. And then this one's going to take a while to get through. So in the 2004 book, I Heard You Paint Houses, Frank the Irishman Sheeran and the Closing of the Case on Jimmy Hoffa, author Charles Brandt claims that a man named Frank Sheeran confessed to killing Jimmy Hoffa. So if you can go to slide, 16, Charles Brandt is on the left, and then on the right are just a couple pictures of Frank Sheeran. So this is a quote from Wikipedia. According to the book, Sheeran claims O'Brien drove him, Hoffa, and fellow mobster Sal Bergoglio to a house in Detroit where he shot Hoffa twice in the back of the head. Further, in 2004, Sheeran admitted to reporters that he had murdered Hoffa, although bloodstains found in the Detroit house in which Sheeran claimed the murder had happened were determined not to match Hoffa's DNA. So, Sheeran was a Philadelphia resident who was a local Teamsters official, which meant by default he hung around the mafia.
Yeah.
And so, like, on the surface, this looks like possible, right? But there are 2 articles that negate pretty much every single claim made in this book. So, there's a 2019 Slate article titled The Lies of the Irishman, which negates most of these claims. It was written by Bill Tonelli, because no one involved in this is not Irish or Italian. So, several people who knew Sheeran stated that he had never killed anyone ever, and that wasn't his thing. So, he'd been indicted for murder of 2 union rivals. He was never convicted, and he had not pulled the trigger himself, allegedly. The allegation was that he had called hits on them, which, again, I don't think he would have even had the power to do, because he was not in the mafia. The only thing he'd actually been convicted of was cheating his own union members. So there's that. Sheeran was actually pretty close with Hoffa. The Hoffa's memo actually lists him as someone who was known to be in the area at the time of the disappearance, but he was a close friend of Hoffa's. He's actually listed, like, they have a list of, like, local suspects and then, like, not local suspects. He's technically on the list of not local suspects, but he's the very last guy, and it basically just says friend of Hoffa's. So I don't even think they think of him as a suspect. They just didn't know where else to put him in the categories, you know? And then Tonelli interviewed several law enforcement officials involved in the case. None of them thought that Sheeran was involved. Dan Moldia, who's that investigative journalist we talked about earlier, he thinks he may have been involved, but that he didn't commit the murder. There are also issues with things that Sheeran said in the book. So this is a quote from the article. Also, according to Sheeran, those words, "I heard you paint houses," were mob code meaning. "I heard you killed people," the paint being the blood that splashes when you fire bullets into a body. And then Sheeran replied to this question, "Yeah, and I do my own carpentry work too. This means I also dispose of the dead bodies," end quote. That's not a thing. Tonelli could find no evidence of that phrase being used anywhere other than this book.
That's like some bullshit that people make up when they try to write a spy book, where you, like, sit down at a bar and you're like, "The crow flies at morning," and then the other person is like, "But only when the sun is red," or something.
Exactly!
Right,
Exactly.
like,
So
which, like, I've heard that phrase before, just, I don't know where, but, like, when I was, like, doing my notes, I was like, oh, I have heard the phrase, "I heard you paint houses," and I knew what it meant, but it's bullshit. Like, that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
Sheeran also made a bunch of other claims in the book that were just nonsense, which the second article we get into talks about those as well, but I haven't broken up by article. So, this is a quote from the article. He also said that just before the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba in 1962, he was ordered by his mob bosses to drive a truckload of uniforms and weapons to a dog track in Florida, where he delivered the cargo to CIA agent E. Howard Hunt, who, a decade later, would be one of the Watergate burglars. And then, in November 1963, Sheeran said he was summoned to an Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, where a gangster handed him a duffel bag containing 3 rifles and told him to deliver them to a pilot who took the bag and disappeared. And then, next thing you know, Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated the president. Also, Sheeran tells about taking a suitcase containing $500,000 in cash to the lobby of the Washington, D.C. Hilton, where he was joined by then U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, who sat a while to shoot the breeze and walked off with the money, a bribe for his boss, President Richard Nixon. Like,
That's...
what are the odds this one dude was involved in these 3 very different historical events?
And, like, 3 really prominent events. I mean, it's like, possible, but, like, it just kind of sounds like he's inserting himself.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I don't believe this, but do you remember when we were in AP history and fucking, what's his name? Henry Clay wouldn't die, and he just showed up in every single historical event until, like,
that's true.
he was about 387 years old.
Yeah, that's true. He had a reason to be there, though. Frank Sheeran had no reason to be at any of these events. Because, again, he wasn't in the mafia. So.
Yeah, so, like, they wouldn't...
I don't think they would entrust him with stuff like this, right? So...
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't... something about it seems wrong.
Yeah. So Tonelli only found 4 people who buy Sheeran's story, and he interviewed a shit ton of people. And finally, probably the most important thing, Sheeran was Irish, and the mob thought to be responsible for Hoffa's death was Italian. And a lot of people doubt that an Italian mob would have trusted an Irish person with this job. Which I agree with, personally. Am I wrong, though?
That's racist. Did I ever tell you about my great-grandfather and my... No, wait.
Huh?
Yeah. Did I ever tell you that... Okay, wait a minute. Now I'm confused.
Oh my god.
Yeah, my great-grandfather would, like, not speak to my great-aunt when she first came over and was, like, being all pissy and, like, huffy and wouldn't look at her, wouldn't talk to her, blah, blah, blah. And finally someone realized what he was doing, and they were like, she's not Italian, she's Jewish. And he was like, oh, okay. And then they were, like, best friends. But he, like,
oh my god,
wouldn't talk to her because he thought she was Italian, and it was an Irish family. And he was like, nope, can't, no, fuck her, she's Italian. But,
okay, but, like, that kind of, like, proves my point that, like, they wouldn't...
I'm yeah. Saying, I know, I'm trying to back you up here. Like,
yes, yeah.
They did not like each other back in the day.
No, they did not. Yeah, and so... I agree with this Slate article that's like they wouldn't have... He was not involved in these things. They would not have had an Irish guy do this job. Like, no. So, there's also a Daily Beast...
as far as you can throw him.
Yeah. There's also a Daily Beast article that goes into all of this. So, it goes into a lot more detail about, like, the actual suspects and how Sheeran is very clearly not one of them. Which you guys can go read the article if you're really that interested. I left that out because I thought this part was funnier. So it also points out how Sheeran got basic facts wrong. So this is all just a quote from that Daily Beast article. The big burly teamster claims he flew in a private plane to the Pontiac, Michigan airport north of Detroit. It's gone now, Sheeran said. If I'm not mistaken, it's a housing development. He is mistaken. The Pontiac Municipal Airport has been in continuous operation since 1928 and is now called Pontiac International Airport. So that's one. Sheeran said...
Okay.
Yeah, there's 2 more. Sheeran said he got in a car with the keys in it that had been left in the airport parking lot for him and drove to a house in northwest Detroit. Along the way, Sheeran said he passed the Matches Red Fox restaurant where Hoffa was waiting. He didn't worry that Hoffa might see him because, quote, the restaurant was set back quite a way in the parking lot. No, it wasn't. The standalone restaurant building is only separated from busy Telegraph Road by a sidewalk and 1 row of parking spaces. If Brandt, who was the author of this book, had done a simple Google satellite map search of the location, he would have known that his self-styled hitman was wrong. And then the last one, Sheeran claims New Jersey teamster / gangster Salvatore Sallybugs Bergoglio was in the Detroit house when he got there. Sheeran said Bergoglio had Coke bottle glasses and thick, curly black hair. No, he didn't. He had thick hair, but it was sandy brown, not black, and not curly. Brandt could have learned this by reviewing the media photos of Bergoglio from that time. So this article is really just shading Brandt for not doing, like, his own research, and points out that Brandt was an attorney. And so, like, how bad of an attorney are you if you're not doing basic research? This article, they also interviewed Dan Moldia, who said both here and in Slate that Sheeran made up the claims as a last-ditch effort for some money. Regardless of the truth, this book is what the movie The Irishman was based off of, which came out in 2019.
Oh my god.
Dan Moldia actually told Robert De Niro, who was involved in making the movie, that he was being conned. Like, that is how fake people think this book is. So, that's really it on, like, who committed the murder. The site of the murder, obviously, is also unknown. And I only have one suggestion here. There is a criminology professor named James Bucalato, because no one in the story is not Italian or Irish.
Yes.
Although I think Hoffa may have been Polish. I don't remember. Suggests that Hoffa was murdered a mile away from the restaurant at the home of Carlo Licata, son of mobster Nick Licata. That's all I have for that one. I don't know if that's true. Which there's one that kind of is a site of the murder, but also a body disposal one, so I put it under the body one. So, the rest of this is where theories about where the body might be. So this first one, a woman named Susan, she didn't want to use her whole name, told WBCK Radio in Battle Creek, Michigan in August of 2021, I believe. So she told this radio station like a month ago at this point, that her relative was a mechanic at Louis Linto's limo service, and that her relative had believed that Hoffa was buried in one of the grease pits in the shop, as it had been completely filled in with concrete the day after Hoffa's disappearance. Susan's grandmother had attempted to call the FBI in 2020, but wasn't taken seriously, and her grandmother had recently passed away. There's like no evidence of this, like at all. But the Hoffa's memo mentions that there were some inconsistencies in Linto's story, and that he knew the Giacalones, which, like, these people all fucking knew each other. Like, that's kind of a given. This was my favorite quote from the Hoffa's memo. It notes that, quote, Linto's memory is bad, either genuinely or by design. I know. It also noted that his employees were firmly under his control and they would do anything for him, and ends with, it is felt Linto may remain key to this investigation. I couldn't find anything about police looking into this claim, so I have no resolution on this. That's just what this woman said. So just moving on from there, for a while, people still think this. I don't know why I said for a while. People still think this. People think that Hoffa is buried under the west end zone in Giant Stadium in New Jersey. So construction...
That's really specific.
It is, yeah.
Right.
So construction on the stadium was completed in 1976, which was, a year after Hoffa disappeared. So, the timeline does match up. But the FBI didn't think they would risk moving him across multiple states. That's really, really risky. So that stadium was actually demolished in 2010, and they didn't find any human remains. And then before it was demolished, Mythbusters tried to find the body, and they couldn't find it either.
Mythbusters got involved?
Yes, they did.
Oh, my lord.
Maisie! Stop it. Maisie! Girl. I know, ma'am. Hey, Maisie. Why?
Oh my god, now Peppa's biting me. What the fuck, animals?
Yuki's taking a bath on my feet.
I gotta move her. Hold on. She's gonna just keep biting.
We're almost done.
I know. Let me just move her. It's like moving a snake. Okay. She's gone.
Okay. So, tips given. You good?
Yes.
Everyone good? Okay. So tips
Yes.
given in 1975 said that Hoffa, good lord, could have been buried in a drum, like an oil drum, in the Everglades, beneath the pilings for a new Detroit high-rise, beneath the pavement of I-75, in a field, or in another oil drum in a landfill in New Jersey. He wasn't in any of those places. He might also be buried beneath a golf course in Georgia, which is where that Golf Digest article came in. He's probably not buried underneath a golf course in Georgia. If the FBI thought it would have been too risky to move him to Jersey, why the fuck would they take him to Georgia? That doesn't, I don't know. And then this is from the Daily Beast, and this is the one that makes the most sense to me personally. So this is a quote from the Daily Beast. One FBI theory was that Hoffa was taken to a secluded location nearby, knocked unconscious, then put in the trunk of the Giacalone car and driven to Central Sanitation, a mafia-operated waste disposal facility in an industrial area. Investigators speculated loud machinery was activated, Hoffa was shot in the head, then his body was dumped in a high-intensity industrial incinerator. In this scenario, he became part of the ozone layer shortly after he disappeared. No body, no evidence. Central Sanitation burned to the ground about the time FBI agents began snooping around as part of the Hoffa investigation.
What?
So, personally, I buy this one a lot more than any of the other ones. Personally. That's just me. And then that's really it. They couldn't really do a whole lot of investigating because there was no evidence. It's the mafia, so they're not gonna fucking talk to the feds regardless. And there's just, if he was, incinerated, that's it. It's not like, what I mean?
It's not like they could just be like, yeah.
Yeah, there's just nothing. And so, now, Hoffa is remembered a lot of people seem to think of him in one of two ways, a corrupt mafia affiliate or a hero to unionized truck drivers, whereas I think it's very possible to think of him as both, and that is how I think of him as both.
Yeah. But people are multidimensional, friends.
Yeah, I think both can be true here. So that's really it. There just isn't...
Listen, one man's mafioso is another man's socialist
union hero.
Revolutionary.
Like, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I have. A lot of this was just me complaining about how shitty that book was and how all the information was wrong.
And how that Sheeran dude is probably a liar.
This is why I don't trust any Sheerans. You got him, you got Ed. They're a shady bunch. Missouri State University is trying to call me for money.
Yeah, they keep doing that to me too. They call me at like 9:30 at night. They call me at really weird times.
Weird.
They're like, "Hi, I'm in the band. Can you spare some change?" And I'm like, "I have less than $20 in my bank account, but thanks for playing."
Right.
Okay. Do you guys have any like final comments or thoughts? Any theories that you? I know I didn't really provide many.
Legally say out loud.
Yeah.
To protect my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that I didn't really provide different options for a lot of the theories. That's because there aren't any viable options for a lot of the theories.
Right. Like,
I tried to do as many as I could, but like with the burial sites, like maybe the one in the old limo place, but like I don't know, like that place isn't still, I googled it, like it's not still in operation that I can tell.
yeah.
Or at least Linto is no longer running it, which like he's probably dead by now too. But it's not called like Linto's limo service. Like I couldn't find an address. I didn't look that hard. If I had, I probably could have found it. But like there's a good chance that place is
What
under
kind
new
of internet sleuth are
management?
you?
Like I said, it wasn't a priority for me with this.
Oh no.
But like if it had been like remodeled or demolished, you'd think that they would have dug stuff up and I don't know. So that one doesn't really, I don't think he was buried under the west end zone of Giants Stadium.
I personally, that's my favorite one, so I'm gonna go with that one is true.
Okay.
For no reason other than it's the most interesting.
It is, yeah.
And it's hyper specific for no reason.
Yeah.
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 Like those women who might be buried under Cox Hospital.
Yeah. The Springfield 3. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like real. That's for real.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Are we good then?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, I need to go start my witness protection application. Please cut out all those names.
I'm going to cut them all out. You're fine. Okay.
I'm just really nervous.
I know, it's fine. I will cut it all out. Our ending is that we have no ending. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.